We have reached the end game. 4 races and 2 sprint races left, with the title going down to the wire. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen are all covered by 36 points. And with only 116 points left on offer, every single point matters. And you'll see all over the internet people coming out with multiple different opinions on who's going to win the championship. Can it be Max Verstappen, the consistent 4-time world champion, the best of the best in F1 right now? Oscar Piastri, the newcomer on the block, potentially causing an upset? Or Lando Norris, which some would say is the home favourite from McLaren, who can get over the line first? So let's have a little bit of a dive into the final 4 races, some key stats from past seasons, and try to figure out if we can see who holds the advantage heading into the last bit of the season. So we'll start off with Brazil, of course the track that is coming up this race weekend. And Brazil is known for just being an absolutely crazy race half the time. It's just one of those tracks that always seems to bring rain. And potentially this time round, it won't be much different. The weather forecast right now potentially looks like maybe rain on Sunday. It's been a bit flip-flop. Like I say flip-flop, 30-40% coverage so far, compared to Saturday, which is around 70%. So we'll definitely have one session that will be rainy. And it is so vital looking at the 2024 results to see exactly what we can get in 2025. Purely because sprint race wise, Norris P1, Piastri P2, Verstappen P4. The reason I bring up the sprint race first is because this is what will happen most likely if we have a dry circuit. McLaren's car just is so suited to a track like Brazil. It's a lot of high-speed corners. It's only got the one super duper long back straight. And I don't expect it to be any different in 2025. Like we saw in Mexico, McLaren still have a car when it is suited to them to be absolutely dominant. And sometimes, if it is like a circuit like that, we won't be able to see Verstappen even putting up a fight there. However, this is why we also need to have a look at the race and what happened last year. Verstappen P1, Norris 6th, and Piastri P8. And this is exactly what can happen if it decides to rain. So, honestly, the weather conditions are so vital in every F1 session, of course, but no more important than in Brazil for Verstappen, because it would really push him back up there if McLaren do have a rocket ship to really try and steady the ship and still gain some points at them at realistically what should be an advantage track for McLaren. Like, he went from P17 to P1 last year, Verstappen. He's an absolutely incredible driver, shock horror, fork found in kitchen, and it is just such a vital one because I really think for Verstappen's chances in the championship, he has to be doing a rain dance right now for Brazil to bring something chaotic, because out of the final 4 races, it's the only one I'll get into in a little while that can really bring an uproar weather-wise. And Max, the type of driver he is, the type of driver you have to be in the wet conditions, it brings out the best of the ability on the drivers on the grid. The grid gets closer. It's all about the driver, and Verstappen's always on top when that happens. So like I mentioned, 100%, I do expect McLaren to be heading into the first Friday sessions, if we don't get any rain on the Friday, to be showing that they probably look like the fastest car on the grid. But with all of these weather conditions, can't block out Max Verstappen just yet. Now into the first race of the triple header, the final triple header of the season, which is Vegas. Vegas is a very interesting track in the sense of, I did just mention that Brazil was the final track that could bring up a surprise, chaotic result, maybe a DNF from one of the big front runners. But Vegas still has the chance to throw up interesting results, but I wouldn't say surprising. And there's a reason for it. And I really want to again look at the 24 results and a few other bits and bobs for this. Purely because this track just does not suit McLaren or anything to do with that McLaren car. Take the results from last year. Verstappen 5th, Norris 6th, and Piastri in 7th. Now, I really want to show exactly how little pace the McLaren had, because Norris was almost 30 seconds off Verstappen, even though Verstappen was in 5th, and Piastri was further than 30 seconds. So McLaren was the clear fourth fastest car this weekend when we headed into Vegas last year. And we've seen at tracks very similar to Vegas, it just hasn't really gone McLaren's way. It's going to be a lot more like Monza and Baku, which we've seen favours more of the side of a Verstappen and the Red Bull, because there's a lot more harsh braking, there's a lot more straights, and both of those combined just don't really help McLaren. Now, do I think McLaren will be absolutely dreadful? No, they have improved from 2024, so the car foundation will be better. So they probably will be fighting for those top 5 positions. But I'd be surprised if one of the McLaren boys actually won the Vegas Grand Prix. It will most likely be between Verstappen and Mercedes. Like in Singapore, Mercedes, they've built a car that only works at nighttime tracks, and last year they won here with a 1-2. I expect Mercedes to be one of the front runners again, but then again this year it looks like the Red Bull, with their new upgrades that Verstappen's been pushing relentlessly to catch McLaren, would be the ones again that I would be like, don't count out Verstappen for this win. And this is where I bring up those interesting results, because this could be a track where Verstappen gets first place to a Norris in P5, a Piastri in P4, P6, and that is exactly the type of points haul he needs to have a chance right now. So 100%, that now means it's one track for Brazil, McLaren's side, and one track on Verstappen's side so far on the next 4 races. And the reason I didn't mention weather until the final section of this circuit is because it works with all 3 of the tracks that I mentioned with Vegas and about to, where they're all in deserts now, and that's why we're not going to get anything absolutely crazy. If we get rain in one of the last 3 races, I will go balls. That's how unrealistic it would be. So don't expect any chaos from any weather updates, which is just one less unknown that we have to think about heading into the rest of the season, which I actually think helps out McLaren, because then there's less variables that could go Verstappen's route compared to McLaren. And actually heading into the second last race of the season, which would be Qatar, 100%, even without even saying anything, it has to be a McLaren track. From the first little bit of info that we have a look around. And it's just high speed corner after high speed corner. The McLaren car loves circuits like this. Sprint-wise last year, Piastri came first with Norris in second and Verstappen in 8th. Red Bull last year just did not get the sprint right. And you're going to notice this with the results when I get into the race as well, that it's quite hard to see exactly from last year's results where the cars will be for 2025. But Piastri got the win. Norris did actually give him the win because of Piastri giving him the sprint race win in Brazil. It was a whole hullabaloo, obviously, when Norris was still slightly in the battle, but by Vegas he was out of it. But again, the sprint race showed exactly what we expect to be heading into this weekend, that McLaren should dominate around Qatar, and it's going to be hard for Verstappen to keep up with them. With Verstappen first, Piastri third, Norris 10th. Now, this isn't a good example of car versus car analysis, but more of driver versus driver versus driver. Verstappen in first place did not have the fastest car in 2024 for that race. Norris looked like he was going to be able to get Verstappen that entire race until Norris cocked up himself. Norris got a penalty, he had to fight back through the rest of the grid, and he could only finish back in 10th. And this is where it also comes down to Verstappen just being Verstappen. He's gonna have this confidence around him. He's gonna have the composure that I just don't think both McLaren boys have shown so far this season to his title charge that he has been going through. So again, I have to put Qatar as another McLaren track, which goes 2-1 in McLaren's favour. But again, because it's a very driver-orientated track, I can also sort of give a half point to Verstappen here. So maybe 2 to 1.5. Because it's one of those tracks like a Silverstone where we were like, oh, McLaren, they look like they've got it in the bag. And then Verstappen just comes out of nowhere and absolutely gets that brilliant pole position. So don't count it out, Verstappen here. And then heading into the final race of the season, which would be Abu Dhabi, there's not much actually we can go off for Abu Dhabi. Track-wise, again, we'll definitely go into McLaren's side of thing. I've been spatting on about it the entire video. I bet you can't guess why it works for McLaren. Yes, long winding corners. It works for McLaren. Not a lot of harsh braking areas. So McLaren should head into this looking like the favourites. And I mean, last year we saw quite something similar with qualifying Norris and Piastri first and second. Now, the race results with Norris first, Verstappen 6th and Piastri 10th, a little bit skewed because Piastri and Verstappen had a crash, but we saw from Norris he was very fast here. Would he have still won if Verstappen and Piastri didn't collide? Probably so. So I'm not worried about McLaren's pace here, and I think it would be hard if Verstappen didn't have the pace in that Red Bull to amount anything to the McLarens in this last race, which is quite scary to think of. So this would come down to Red Bull just having to get the perfect car set up and just giving everything they have to Verstappen. Everything turned up to 110%. But again, I have to put that in the McLaren category, which would go 3 to 1.5 in McLaren's favour. So by looking at the next 4 races, you have to say that both Norris and Piastri hold the advantage over Verstappen. Now, we can't predict any of the chaos that could happen in Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, anything like that. But from the tracks and just those basic looks at it, you'd definitely say that probably Norris has the highest chance now, then Piastri, then Verstappen. But then briefly, we need to mention a little few other things that do help out Verstappen. Like I mentioned, driver related, really everything driver related always comes back to Max Verstappen. And that's when you have a look at the past 4 races. If we look at those, Verstappen has had 2 wins and 1 sprint win, to Norris's 1 win to Piastri's 0. And what that's amounted to is Verstappen having 94 points to Norris's 64 to Piastri's 32. Now, Norris 64 to Verstappen 94, a little bit worrying, because if this happened again, Verstappen would just fall short. So he would have to dig a little bit deeper than the last 4 races if he wanted to win. But it does just emphasise what I kind of want to show with Max Verstappen, where at the end of the day, it could be all the tracks leading to McLaren looking like they will win at all of them, and you just can't count out Max Verstappen. Norris and Piastri have been colliding together quite a few times recently. Norris has had a DNF. Piastri's had a DNF. Verstappen has not. He has just been so consistent. And if he continues doing that, the pressure might get to both of the McLaren duo. So Verstappen definitely holds the advantage mentally and just driver ability. And to be fair, if then we were looking at a little bit more and we wanted to bring in consistency, that's where you'd see Norris a little bit ahead of an advantage over Piastri, because I haven't actually talked about Norris versus Piastri a lot. But podium-wise this season, Norris has had 16 to Piastri's 14 to Verstappen's 11. So Norris has definitely been the most consistent driver throughout the entire season without his DNFs. And that's where Piastri has to be a little bit worrying, because Piastri has these races where he just shows pure racecraft ability, but he also shows races where he can just be off of it, like in Mexico and in Qatar. So I think Piastri's got his work cut out a lot more than Norris. And then you've also got Verstappen, who could completely just destroy both of them. So at the end of the day, what do we get from this video? Well, Max Verstappen clearly has the momentum, clearly has the driver ability and the mentality to win this championship. Those are his big 3 things that are looking very spicy for him. Lando Norris has the consistency and Oscar Piastri has those chances to make shock results. But for me, we need to just go back to what I mentioned about the circuits being more McLaren-sided. Realistically, Max needs to get all of his points from the McLaren duo from Brazil and Vegas. Those are his best 2 chances at winning this championship. If anything crazy weather-wise happens in Brazil and he wins, he's right back in it. Then in Vegas, he has to go and then win again or get in the top 3, with both the McLarens being worse than at least Mercedes and Verstappen. And then he will only be around 10-ish, potentially even less points behind both of them, and it's game on. But I really do think if he's not within that 15 points-ish of both of them heading into the last 2 races, he's going to struggle. There's a lot less unpredictability in Qatar and Abu Dhabi, and the tracks just look like it will work more in McLaren's favour. So what do you think down below in the comments? Do you think Verstappen will be able to win this championship with the momentum he has? Do you think Lando Norris holds all the cards right now, being our championship leader? Or can Oscar Piastri finally find his form again and revitalise his season, getting his first championship? Thank you all so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And hey, have a great rest of your day and have a great rest of your week. Take care, everyone.